What if I told you a 12-year-old boy exposed a millionaire fraud, uncovered a murder, and brought down one of the most powerful women in his city, armed with nothing but wisdom passed down from his grandmother? This isn't fiction. This is the story of Marcus Rivera, the kid who asked for leftovers and ended up serving justice. Picture this. A 12-year-old boy standing at the back door of a mansion that costs more than his entire neighborhood. His clothes are clean but worn, his sneakers have holes in them, and his stomach hasn't been full in 3 days. But in his eyes, there's something that no amount of money can buy. There's wisdom. This is Marcus Rivera, and he's about to do something that will change everything. For 3 days, Marcus had been watching through the windows of the Grand Castellano estate in Beacon Hills, California. Not because he was nosy, but because he was hungry. And more than that, he was angry. Here was Elena Castellano, sitting in her golden wheelchair, throwing away entire plates of gourmet food while he and his grandmother, Isabella, survived on whatever they could find. But Marcus wasn't there to beg. He was there to make a deal that would sound crazy to anyone else. As Elena's cold steel-blue eyes looked down at him with disgust, Marcus spoke with a calmness that surprised even himself. "Ma'am, I can heal you in exchange for your leftovers." Can you imagine the silence that followed? Here's a woman who had spent $15 million on the world's best doctors, and a kid from the projects is offering to cure her paralysis for table scraps. Elena's laughter cut through the air like a knife. "Do you really think I would believe some folk remedy from a barrio kid?" she sneered. "I've spent $15 million on Harvard-trained neurologists. You think a street rat who probably can't even read is going to do what they couldn't?" Now, here's what Elena didn't know. Marcus Rivera wasn't just any kid. While she saw poverty and assumed ignorance, Marcus carried something precious. Something that had been passed down through 4 generations of his family. His great-great-grandmother had been a curandera, a traditional healer in rural Mexico. The knowledge she possessed had traveled through time, from mother to daughter, grandmother to grandchild. Marcus's own grandmother, Isabella Rivera, had worked 40 years as a hospital aide. But her real education came from those late-night conversations with her grandmother, learning about herbs and healing, about reading the signs that doctors miss, about understanding that sometimes the body breaks when the soul is wounded. Just 2 years earlier, when the doctors told Isabella she had 6 months to live because of her diabetes, it wasn't expensive medicine that saved her. It was this ancient knowledge, this wisdom that money can't buy. She cured herself using methods that her own doctors called impossible. But back to Marcus, standing at that door, facing down a woman who thought his brown skin and empty pockets meant he was worthless. "You take medication for back pain every day at 2 in the afternoon," Marcus said calmly, watching Elena's face change. "3 white pills and 1 blue one. And you always complain that your legs feel cold, even when it's hot outside." The arrogance drained from Elena's face like water from a broken glass. "How? How do you know that?" Marcus had spent weeks watching Elena's routine, but not like some creepy stalker. He was doing what his grandmother had taught him to do. Observe. Look for the signs. See what others can't see. While Elena's expensive doctors looked at X-rays and MRI scans, Marcus noticed something else. When Elena got angry at her staff, her feet twitched. When something upset her deeply, her leg muscles tensed up. These weren't the movements of someone who was truly paralyzed. "Because I see what your high-priced doctors refuse to acknowledge," Marcus replied, his voice respectful but firm. "You don't need more medicine. You need someone who understands that healing sometimes comes from places you'd never expect." Elena slammed the door shut, but Marcus had seen something new in her eyes. Something that wasn't just anger or contempt. It was fear. Fear that this poor kid from across the street had noticed something that teams of specialists had missed. As Marcus walked back to the tiny apartment he shared with his grandmother, he wasn't discouraged. He was planning, because Isabella had taught him about a condition she'd seen during her years at the hospital. She called it paralysis del alma, paralysis of the soul. Some people get so hurt, so guilty about something they've done, that their mind creates chains for their body, Isabella had explained. Their legs work just fine, but their heart is so heavy with secrets that they can't bear to stand up and face the world. That evening, as Isabella prepared their simple dinner of rice and beans, Marcus shared what had happened. "She's scared, abuela," he said, using the Spanish word for grandmother that always made Isabella smile. "She knows I saw something real." Isabella nodded, her weathered hands wise and gentle. "When rich people are afraid of poor people, Mijo, it's because they know they've done something wrong. And when they're afraid of the truth, they'll do anything to destroy the person who can expose it." She was right. Over the next few days, Elena launched what could only be described as a war against Marcus and his family. She called Preston Academy, the private school where Marcus studied on a full scholarship, and told them he'd been trespassing and harassing neighbors. The message was clear. One more problem, and he'd lose the education that was his only ticket out of poverty. Elena also contacted the superintendent of Sunset Gardens, the housing complex where Marcus lived with Isabella. Suddenly, there were noise complaints that didn't exist, surprise inspections that found imaginary problems, and threats of eviction for violations that were completely made up. "She's trying to make us disappear," Marcus told Isabella one evening as she prepared their nightly cup of herbal tea. "She wants us gone so she doesn't have to face what I know about her." But Isabella had survived 73 years of people trying to silence her. She'd faced discrimination at work, racism in the hospital, and doctors who dismissed her knowledge because of her accent and her brown skin. She recognized the game Elena was playing. "That woman is more afraid than I thought," Isabella said quietly. "Let me tell you something, Mijo. When I was your age, there was a white doctor who tried to get me fired from the hospital because I knew things he didn't. He used all his power to try to destroy me." "What happened?" Marcus asked. Isabella smiled with the wisdom of someone who had faced much worse enemies. "I did what our family has always done. I watched. I learned. I gathered evidence. And when the time was right, I used his own knowledge against him." That's when Marcus decided to do some investigating of his own. Using the computers at the school library, he began researching Elena Castellano. What he found changed everything. Elena hadn't been born rich. She was originally Elena Rossetti, the daughter of Italian immigrants who had worked in factories their whole lives. She'd married into the Castellano fortune, but that fortune had been built on the backs of migrant workers like Marcus's own family. But here's where the story gets really dark. The accident that supposedly left Elena paralyzed? It happened exactly one day after she discovered her husband Richard was planning to divorce her for a younger woman. One day after she learned she was about to lose everything. Even more suspicious, Richard had died under mysterious circumstances just 2 years later. His will had been changed just days before his death, leaving everything to Elena. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence. Marcus dug deeper and discovered something that made his blood run cold. The Rivera family had been working for the Castellanos for generations. His great-great-grandmother had labored in their fields. His great-grandmother had cleaned their houses. And Isabella? She had been the one caring for Richard's mother when the old woman was dying of cancer. But here's the most incredible part. Richard's mother hadn't died. Isabella had cured her using traditional healing methods. But the family doctors took all the credit. They never knew that the miracle recovery came from an elderly Latina woman they barely acknowledged. As Marcus pieced together this history, he realized something that made his hands shake. Elena wasn't just pretending to be paralyzed to keep her husband's money. She wasn't just a fraud. She was a murderer. And somehow, A 12-year-old boy from the projects had stumbled onto evidence that could destroy her completely. That night, as Marcus lay in his small bed listening to his grandmother's gentle snoring, he understood what Isabella had been trying to teach him. This wasn't just about healing Elena's fake paralysis. This was about generations of injustice, about powerful people who hurt others and thought they'd never face consequences. Elena Castellano had built her entire life on lies, theft, and murder. She thought she was fighting a poor boy who wanted her leftovers. She had no idea she was about to face the accumulated wisdom of 4 generations, a family that had survived centuries of oppression, and a young man who carried not just the knowledge to expose her crimes, but the courage to stand up to someone who considered him less than human. As Marcus closed his eyes, he wasn't thinking about revenge. He was thinking about justice. He was thinking about all the people like his family who had been dismissed, ignored, and stepped on by people like Elena. Tomorrow, the real healing would begin, and it was going to hurt Elena far more than she ever imagined. Because sometimes, the most powerful medicine comes from the most unexpected hands. And sometimes, the person you underestimate the most is the one who holds the key to your destruction. The Sunday morning when everything came crashing down for Elena Castellano started like any other. She was sitting in her golden wheelchair, reading financial reports, probably counting her stolen millions. She had no idea that across the street, Marcus Rivera was preparing to serve her a dose of truth that would destroy her life completely. But first, let me tell you what Marcus had discovered in his research. Elena's real name was Elena Rossetti. She'd been born to poor Italian immigrants who worked in factories. Everything about her wealthy background was a lie. She'd married Richard Castellano III not for love, but for his fortune. A fortune built on exploiting people exactly like Marcus's family. When Richard decided to divorce her for a younger woman, Elena couldn't accept losing everything. So she staged her own accident, pretending to be paralyzed to gain sympathy and avoid the divorce. But that wasn't enough for her. 2 years later, Richard died under suspicious circumstances, and guess what? His will had been mysteriously changed just days before his death, leaving everything to his disabled wife. Marcus had uncovered medical records showing that Elena had been paying doctors to falsify her test results. He'd found evidence that Richard had been poisoned with digitalis, a plant extract that mimics a heart attack. And most damning of all, Marcus had been recording Elena for months, capturing video of her walking around when she thought no one was watching. This woman wasn't just a fraud. She was a murderer who had built her empire on lies and blood. Now, here's where Marcus showed wisdom beyond his years. He could have gone to the police alone. He could have tried to expose Elena by himself. But Isabella had taught him something important. When you're fighting someone with power and money, you need allies. You need proof so overwhelming that even the corrupt system can't ignore it. So Marcus recruited 2 people who could help him deliver justice. First was his grandmother Isabella, who carried the respect of everyone who knew her and the medical knowledge to explain Elena's condition. Second was Dr. Sarah Martinez, a neurologist who had been blackmailed by Elena into falsifying medical reports. Dr. Martinez had been living with guilt for years. She'd confirmed Elena's fake paralysis because Elena threatened to destroy her career if she didn't. But when Marcus approached her with evidence, she realized this was her chance to finally do the right thing. That Sunday morning, Marcus walked up to Elena's front door for the first time. Not the servant's entrance in the back. The front door. Like he had every right to be there. Because he did. When Elena opened the door and saw Marcus standing there with Isabella and Dr. Martinez, the color drained from her face like someone had opened a drain. "Good morning, Elena," Marcus said with a calmness that must have been terrifying. "I've come to keep my promise. Today is the day you're going to walk again." Elena tried to slam the door, but her arrogance got the better of her. "What kind of sick joke is this? I've called security. Marcus smiled. Please do. They'll want to see this too, especially when they learn who you really are. That's when Isabella stepped forward with an old leather briefcase, moving with the dignity of a woman who had survived 73 years of people trying to silence her. Elena Rossetti, Isabella said clearly. Daughter of Italian immigrants, born March 12, 1975. Married Richard Castellano in 2005, 3 months after discovering his affairs. Elena's face went white. Nobody had known her real name for decades. She'd buried Elena Rossetti so deep that she probably thought that person was gone forever. The accident that supposedly paralyzed you, Marcus continued, happened exactly 1 day after you learned Richard was planning to divorce you. What a coincidence. Dr. Martinez stepped forward, her hands shaking but her voice strong. I treated Richard's mother years ago when she was dying of cancer. Isabella here was the one who actually cured her, though the family never knew. I kept all the medical records, including the neurological tests I performed on Elena after her supposed accident. She paused, looking Elena straight in the eye. Your scans always showed normal neural activity, but you paid me $5 million to lie about it. Can you imagine what was going through Elena's mind at that moment? Her entire world of lies was crumbling in real time. But Marcus wasn't done. He pulled out a digital recorder, and suddenly Elena's own voice filled the air. Dr. Martinez, I need you to stick to the diagnosis. If Richard finds out I can walk, I'll lose everything in the divorce. Keep confirming the paralysis, and I'll double your fee. You recorded my private calls. Elena screamed, but her voice cracked with fear. Not just calls, Isabella said calmly. Marcus documented how you walk when you think nobody's watching. Marcus connected his phone to a speaker, and video after video began playing. Elena getting up from her wheelchair to reach high shelves. Elena walking normally through her garden in the early morning hours. Elena actually running on a treadmill in her basement gym. 43 videos over 6 months. Elena moving like a completely healthy person when she thought she was alone. But the most damning evidence was still coming. Richard's medical records, Marcus said quietly, his young voice carrying the weight of absolute truth. You poisoned him with digitalis while he was in the hospital. You altered his will while he was sedated. And you blackmailed Dr. Martinez into signing a false death certificate. Dr. Martinez hung her head in shame. She threatened to expose the fake paralysis if I didn't confirm Richard died naturally. I was a coward. I let her terrorize me into covering up murder. Isabella spoke with the authority of someone who had worked in healthcare for 4 decades. Digitalis, extracted from foxglove plants. It kills slowly, makes it look like a heart attack, and becomes nearly impossible to detect after a few days. Elena collapsed back into her wheelchair, realizing that decades of carefully constructed lies were falling apart in minutes. You don't understand, she whispered. He was going to leave me with nothing. I gave him the best years of my life. That's when Marcus delivered the moment we'd all been waiting for. Now for the real cure, he said, his voice carrying an authority that seemed impossible from a 12-year-old boy. Stand up, Elena. We know you can. I can't. Elena cried, but there was desperation in her voice now, not conviction. Stand up, Marcus commanded with such power that everyone in that marble hallway felt it. And Elena did. She jolted upright instinctively, standing on legs that had supposedly been paralyzed for 8 years. For a moment, nobody spoke. They just stared at this woman who had fooled the world, now exposed and trembling with rage and terror. Congratulations, Marcus said softly. You're officially cured. Isabella approached with a stack of legal documents. These reports are going to the police, the FBI, and the IRS today. Insurance fraud, falsified medical records, tax evasion, and first-degree murder. Marcus added, We also sent copies to every major news outlet and social media platform. By tomorrow morning, the whole world will know the story of the fake paralyzed millionaire who murdered her husband. Elena looked around desperately, but there was nowhere to run. No amount of money could buy her way out of this. The truth had caught up with her, delivered by a boy she had dismissed as worthless. In the distance, police sirens were getting closer. Someone had called the authorities, probably a neighbor who heard all the commotion. Elena looked at Marcus with a mixture of hatred and something that might have been respect. How did a 12-year-old boy destroy my entire life? Marcus smiled with the wisdom of someone who had learned that justice sometimes requires patience, observation, and the courage to stand up to people who think you're beneath them. Very simple, he replied. You completely underestimated someone who grew up knowing that survival requires intelligence, not privilege. And you forgot that the most powerful medicine often comes from the hands of people you've been taught to despise. As the police entered that mansion, Elena's reign of lies finally ended. But Marcus's story was just beginning. 6 months later, the transformation was complete. Elena's mansion had been seized by the FBI and converted into the Isabella Rivera Community Health Center. Marcus, now 14, had become Harvard Medical School's youngest student ever. Though he turned down millions of dollars in interview offers to continue learning traditional healing methods alongside modern medicine, Elena was serving 25 years in federal prison for first-degree murder. The irony? Prison stress had caused real muscle atrophy, and now she genuinely needed the wheelchair she had once used as a prop. The disability she had faked had become her reality. Dr. Martinez lost her medical license, but found redemption volunteering at the community center. Marcus taught me more in 6 months than I learned in decades of expensive medical school, she said in interviews. I forgot that real medicine starts with seeing the whole person, not just looking at test results. The Sunset Gardens community was transformed. Children who once struggled just to eat now dreamed of becoming doctors, scientists, and lawyers. Marcus had proven that intelligence and determination could defeat any system designed to keep people down. But perhaps the most powerful moment came when Marcus visited Elena in prison. Just once, he sat across from her in that cold visiting room, looking at a woman who had lost everything. "Why did you come here?" she asked through the bulletproof glass. "To make sure you understood," Marcus replied. "I never wanted to destroy you. I just wanted you to stop trying to destroy us." "You were just a child," Elena whispered. "And you were a wealthy adult with unlimited resources," Marcus said gently. "Which one of us should have known right from wrong?" For the first time in her life, Elena understood the magnitude of her moral failure. A 12-year-old boy had shown more wisdom, integrity, and compassion than she had managed in her entire privileged existence. Marcus's story became a case study in universities across the country. The Rivera effect forced institutions to recognize that exceptional intelligence and wisdom can come from anywhere, especially from communities that have been traditionally ignored or dismissed. Isabella continues running the community center, now expanded to serve thousands of people. She trains a new generation of healers who combine ancient wisdom with modern science, proving that knowledge has no color, no accent, and no social class. Elena's story became a warning taught in criminology classes about how privilege without character leads to self-destruction. When new prisoners ask how a rich woman ended up there, the answer is always the same. She underestimated someone she considered inferior and paid the ultimate price for her arrogance. But the real lesson of this story goes deeper than one boy defeating one cruel woman. It's about how our society ignores wisdom when it comes from people who don't fit our stereotypes about who should be smart or worthy of respect. Marcus proved that the most powerful healing isn't just about fixing broken bodies. It's about transforming minds that have been closed by prejudice into hearts that are open to recognizing greatness wherever it exists. In turning Elena's mansion of privilege into a center of healing, Marcus showed us that true justice doesn't come from revenge. It comes from creating a world where wisdom is valued no matter where it comes from, where a 12-year-old from the projects can stand up to a millionaire and win, not through violence or hatred, but through truth. Elena tried to destroy a poor boy who asked for her leftovers. Instead, she ended up destroying herself, while Marcus learned that genuine healing means transforming not just individuals, but entire communities. Sometimes the greatest teachers are the people the world has taught you to ignore. Sometimes the most powerful medicine comes from the most unexpected hands. And sometimes, justice arrives in the form of a brave child who refuses to let the world tell him he's not worth listening to. That's the real truth Marcus Rivera taught us all. And that's a lesson worth remembering, no matter who you are or where you come from.